when you accept the role of a leader, you have a responsibility to learn how to do it better. Our success starts on the inside, and leadership is an extension of how we lead ourselves.
Hey keyboards, I'm Thembi. I'm a theater artist, educator, and tech enthusiast who loves to talk to interesting people about their journeys in arts, education, and technology. And I am your host. On this episode of Keyboard, I'm joined by Dr. Julie Donley, a leadership coach, award-winning author, and behavioral health expert with nearly 30 years of experience. Her latest book, Leading at the Speed of People, includes practical strategies for emotional mastery and conflict management, grounded in the principles of her CARE leadership model: communication, appreciation, respect, and empathy. We talk about the spark that ignited her passion for leadership development, the roots of her coaching philosophy, a surprising challenge that women leaders can face in the workplace, and so much more. Stay locked in, keyboards. Dr. Julie Donley is next. Welcome, Dr. Julie Donley.
Hi, Thembi. How are you? It's so good to be here. Appreciate it.
I'm great. Thanks for being here. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. So let's jump in.
Sounds good.
All right. So Dr. Julie, you're an executive coach, a speaker, an author with degrees in business, nursing, and even a doctorate in education with a focus on organizational leadership. This is an incredible set of accomplishments. So tell us what experiences or ideas set you on the path to such a multifaceted career.
I started my career in behavioral health care. So I took a job before I became a nurse in on an adolescent unit in a psychiatric facility. And a couple things happened there. First of all, I loved it. I loved working with the kids. And throughout my career in psychiatric nursing, I learned so much about people and the connection between emotional pain and behavior. And so it was a really good fit for me. And I worked with adolescents throughout my career. Just really enjoyed that population, but I worked with adults as well. In this first job, however, the other thing that happened was that it was really bad leadership. And the leader was not a nurse, she was an administrator for the unit, and she made people feel small. People were fearful. They were silenced. She dismissed people. If she didn't like you, she wore it all over her face. She was emotionally reactive. Her behavior was inappropriate. For the unit, you have to realize that it's dangerous. It can be very dangerous working in psych. And she made everything worse. And she really enjoyed her power. So everything that you could do wrong as a leader sort of was encapsulated in this woman. And I knew at that young age, I mean, I was in my 20s, right? There had to be a better way to lead. This could not be possibly be the way. And so that really set me on a path to study, to practice leading differently in my own small way in the early years, right? And to develop this deep curiosity about what can we do to bring out the best in the people that work for us? And that curiosity led me to my degrees in business and leadership. I served in a leadership role in different ways throughout my career, and including a director of nursing for a large behavioral health center, and ultimately, coaching and writing as well. This blend of healthcare, business, and education gave me tools to understand both systems and how we pull things together, as well as people. And I started to see leadership not as command and control, not telling people what to do, but showing up in a way so that we can use our influence and our presence to align people and bring people together. Leadership is about relationship and connection and bringing out the best in others. And what increases productivity and engagement and retention and makes work well.
That's really interesting because you were certainly working in that ward with a number of other employees, and everybody has a different response to that kind of stress in the workplace, right? And so for you, you decided, you know what? I'm not just going to take this and stay here and be miserable. I'm not just going to leave and go find something else and move on, but I'm going to do something about it, and I'm going to be empowered to do something about it. And I think that's a really important message to people to think about. What are ways where when you see a situation that's not working, how can you take ownership over that and make it better? So as a result of that negative situation, now you're making the world better, which I think is really incredible.
Yeah, I did leave. It took me a couple years to get out of there. It was the early 90s. It was not so easy to find work. But you're right. We get to choose how we show up. And I made the best of the situation. Now, I was low man on the totem pole too. I wasn't even a nurse then. I'd had a degree, but I was a psychiatric technician. And so I worked very closely with the patients. And I did what I could do with the control that I had, and I continued to learn. And I think sometimes that's the best that we can do to make ourselves better, to put ourselves in a position where we can gain more influence and power and authority to make bigger changes and differences. And I think that's what I found when I became a director and I was responsible for my entire department, right? I There was no way I was going to lead anything like that first woman's example. And I learned a lot through the years of what not to do. And so when I wrote my book on leadership, Leading at the Speed of People, that is the culmination of the opposite, what we should be doing, how we should be treating both ourselves and others that we lead, because leadership starts with self-leadership. So we have to lead ourselves first. When I think about this leader, because I've been talking a lot about her. I've been thinking a lot about her. She didn't have that. She didn't have the self-awareness. She didn't have the emotional intelligence. She probably didn't have the training. And yet, I can understand that. But when you accept the role of a leader, a position, you have a responsibility to learn how to do it better. Regardless of where you come from, of what your background is, if you find yourself in a position where you're responsible for the lives of others and for productivity, then you have a responsibility to learn what you might not know.
And that's exactly what it sounds like you did. So, speaking of leading at the speed of people, your award winning best selling book, you center concepts in this book like self awareness, empathy, respect. Why are these ideas at the center of your leadership philosophy? And you talked a little bit about it before, but why did you decide when you sat down to write the book that, okay, this is where I'm going to center it?
Because leadership is about people. As I say in the book, we're not leading paper clips, right? We lead people, and we need the appropriate skill set to be able to relate to them, to understand them, and to motivate them, to inspire them. And these qualities are what build trust, reduces friction in the workplace and stress, and create in work environments where people can thrive, where work works well. Without these qualities of awareness and empathy and respect, productivity suffers. People become too stressed out. They get burned out, and relationships break down. They leave. And so these skills aren't soft skills, they're success skills. They reduce friction, which I define in the book as the stress, resistance, and even misunderstandings that can slow teams down. So friction is anything that gets in the way of us just doing our job, doing what we need to do to be productive and perform. Fear increases when there's friction. People spend too much time focused on how they can just survive. How do you get by? I mean, I think about that first leader that I had. Each of us were in fear of her. Nobody wanted to be humiliated. And the focus of her tirade, right? It was inappropriate. And so we behaved in ways to work around that. Well, that uses up a lot of energy that could have been better used, in serving the patients. When you lead with awareness and empathy, you develop psychological safety at work and you accelerate trust. And with that, you improve results. And so that's why those three skills, especially empathy and respect, Well, it starts with leading ourselves. So we have to include self-awareness in that. That's why these skills are so important.
It's great that you're pushing back on some ideas that it would seem from a societal level that we take on as roles. We watch television, we watch films, we see certain types of leaders. And I think for some people, when you talk about going back to your leader when you were younger and the one who was sort of the catalyst for you thinking about a new way of leadership, I think about how we look at our sort of the books we read, the movies we and TV shows we see, leaders are very dramatically tyrannical a lot of times, but that's for dramatic tension, which creates some interest in this viewing of the story. I think some of us don't know how to separate that from reality, which you're talking about, which is how people in real life need to be led, and they perform leadership instead of really understanding how leadership is important to how they should behave in leadership with empathy and lead the people and be of the people. So I think it's really interesting that you step away from that and come back to the center it in the humanity, and it seems like it connects to your work in the healthcare field with the goal of making sure that people are cared for and whole. But you've also written two other books, The Journey Called You and Does Change Have to Be So Hard, HARD. So I think you like acronyms. I think that you're really smart about how to help people remember, the ideas that you want us to know. So in the process of writing these three books, what have you learned about yourself?
Oh gosh. Yeah, that's a good question. Um, that I process the world through writing. Each book has been a mirror, helping me see my own growth. I've learned I'm most fulfilled when I use my voice to help others to understand themselves better and life better and people better. And I love to learn. And I like to teach others what I'm learning. I like to simplify and make sense of the complex, giving myself and others the gift of clarification. I learned I'm also always in process, like everyone else, like your audience members. We're all in process. We're all growing, being and becoming. And writing has helped me find clarity in the messiness of life because life is messy. Each book definitely revealed a deeper truth, and that is that our success starts on the inside, and leadership is an extension of how we lead ourselves. So every time I write, I discover something new about myself and the work, and I'm not done. I have another few books that I'll be writing, so stay tuned.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Yeah, I'm not done yet.
And we're all in process. Okay. So I'm assuming that you take that into your coaching work. Let's talk about that. So have you seen your leadership strategies play out in the workplace after you've coached executives? I'm assuming you have a process for checking in with them and assessing the impact of your work in your coaching area of your work.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I've seen leaders shift from reactional to intentional when they embrace people centered strategies, which is really what I teach. Teams communicate more openly, the performance improves, stress goes down, the ripple effects are very powerful, and the leader becomes more confident and competent in leading. Because again, like I sort of hinted at this original leader that really spurred me to learn all this. We all have gaps in our leadership understanding of how we should be showing up in the different positions or roles in our lives. And the gaps aren't the problem. It's being able to lead ourselves through those gaps and learn what we need to learn. Also, context matters. So you might lead one way in one position, but then you go to something else and you have to learn different skills, or, it requires something new of you. And I find myself asking clients often, what does this situation that you find yourself in require? What is that requiring of you? Because it's different. And that is great because we get to stretch, but we have to ask ourselves those tough questions. I have seen clients become more effective, and this is a biggie, at dealing with conflict because a lot of managers avoid it. That's like their go-to. Well, I don't know how to deal with, I don't want to deal with the emotion stuff. So I just don't deal with it. Well, that's not helpful. And that's not leadership. People want our leaders to lead, to actually do something, to guide, and to make things work well for us. They don't always have the answers, and that's why we have leaders. One leader I worked with realized her team was walking on eggshells, much like we did in the with that leader that I at the shared about at the beginning of the call. Once this client shifted her energy, she had to notice first. That's why we start with self leadership, right? We have to be aware. Awareness is key because then we can make choices. And once she recognized that, she learned to shift her energy. We had to. She had to identify how she wanted to show up, how she wanted other people's to feel in her presence. So she calmed her presence and clarified expectations. And her team became more open and collaborative. It took time, but the culture change that it doesn't always need sweeping reforms, but it often starts with a shift in how the leader shows up. Many of my clients want to learn strategies for how to navigate their emotions so they can better address, like I said, conflicts. This is where empathy and self leadership really do come into play. You need both. And a big part of coaching is to help people see themselves more clearly. One leader I remember she had difficulty leading. She was so accustomed to being nice and being a peer, she had trouble actually accepting that she had risen in the ranks, and she was focused on pleasing everyone, gaining consensus, which is not a healthy leadership strategy for her. It certainly wasn't getting her anywhere. She couldn't get anything accomplished. And so once she realized that, hey, that's not her role. Her role isn't to please people. It's to get things done and to have a clear vision for where they were going and to bring people together, maybe for those discussions. But not everybody has to agree. That helped her to shift and become more leader-like and more effective. And it changed everybody's thinking about the team and what they were there to do. It made things more focused. And I just completed the development of a comprehensive online course on leadership, which I'm excited. It's not released yet. It'll be out in just a couple weeks. So if that's of interest to folks, but that's what not everybody has access to a coach. And so sometimes online learning, or however you like to learn, is another way that we can help ourselves to become better and especially at leading ourselves.
Yes, that's fantastic. We will make sure that we have links to your resources in the show notes so that people can access those if they need to. I'd like to know, when you worked with various clients on their leadership styles, did you find them open to their teams knowing that they were in leadership coaching? Or did you find that they kind of felt like they were doing that on their own and then they went into the office with the new leadership tools in hand?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's different for everyone. My work is confidential. So I don't talk about whether who my clients are or what they're doing or anything like that. But the client can share with whoever they want to share what we're doing, what they're learning, whatever, or that I'm their coach. That's fine. Some do. Some want their team to know that they're working on stuff. Others, it may not be necessary for them to know. They're just working on themselves and being more effective and efficient in their leadership skills. And so it's really, I've had the gamut. I've had the gamut. I've had both occur. So it's sort of an individual thing. And I think it depends on the situation for that individual leader. If it's important
Hmm.
for the team to know that, hey, I'm making changes, I'm committed to doing something different, especially if there's a lot of chaos
Yeah.
and they walking in, then it might be important for them to know that, hey, I have a coach and I'm going to make things better. That also can build credibility quickly for a new leader in a new role and build trust. Like, oh, she's really taking this seriously. I don't know her or him, but this leader is committed to our success. They have this coach. So the other thing is that some companies offer coaching, through I get hired through organizations. A lot of times they'll pay for the coaching, and so there are people within the organization that knows that that leader has a coach.
Yeah, that's interesting. It seems like it's good that they still remain empowered to share or not share. And like you mentioned, if the company hired you to coach, then people are aware and they're able to have a broader conversation. So it's well known that they're working on that self improvement and that the team benefits. So what about
Yeah.
yeah, what about AI though? How does generative AI and leadership intersect?
Oh.
We've seen that in play, and I'm sure that you implement that in some ways, in terms of workflow and things like that. How have you seen those two things intersect? Everybody's talking about
Yeah.
generative AI, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, so AI is taking over operational tasks, redundant tasks, which is great because it frees us up to work on other things, right? To be more effective and efficient. However, people need training, they need instruction on how to use AI in their roles. Some folks catch on really quickly, others need more time and go at a much slower pace. So, leaders really, this is where that empathy, self management, and empathy and respect come in, right? Because leaders need to share a compelling vision for the change, set clear expectations, and they need to meet people where they are. People often struggle to change, which, eh, as I address in my book, Does Change Have to Be So Hard? Leaders have to understand what people go through when changes occur. We struggle with habits, acceptance, fear, letting go of the past, and embracing something new. It's hard. And people embrace change differently. Some resist it completely. So leaders have to meet people where they are and help bring them along with the rest of the team. The other piece in adopting AI is that the emotional labor of leadership becomes more visible and more vital. So, what I mean by that is that leaders need stronger human skills like emotional intelligence and self awareness and clear communication skills to balance out the technology. AI is handling this mechanical work for us, which leaves us the human work to do. Things like giving feedback and managing conflict or reading a room. Leaders who double down on these human skills like empathy and presence and adaptability are the ones who'll thrive in an AI enhanced world.
You just brought up emotional labor in leadership. And I know that you've mentioned that that tends to fall disproportionately on women leaders. Why do you think this is the case?
Yeah. Well, cultural expectations still cast women as the feelers and the caretakers, even in high powered roles. And the reality is, we're good at it. Most of us, right? I mean, just to be
Yeah,
um,
most of us, right?
generalizing,
Yes,
I'm
yes, of
generalizing,
course.
definitely generalizing. And that doesn't mean that's bad. It's good. And it's actually a positive thing for us. But we're often expected to soothe conflict and manage team morale, which work that is essential, but it's often invisible and undervalued. We're not valued. And this coming from a nurse, right? Who we saw through COVID the changes that happened with nursing and other helping well, nursing is primarily a female dominant field. And we started to value what nurses offer because of that, but it's often undervalued. And in this new world of AI, emotional skills are definitely becoming more visible, as I mentioned. But AI doesn't argue, it doesn't talk back. There isn't any conflict. They're never late, right? Or show up late, right? For something. It doesn't get sick, it doesn't talk back, although it can break down. And we feel some kind of way about it when it does, when technology fails us, right? Well, leaders have
Yes,
to
we do.
manage. Yeah, leaders have to manage all of that. This is the human side of work, and it's never going to go away. If anything, it's going to get more pronounced, and we're going to have to deal with it more. Well, women are often socialized to manage the emotions in the room. And I'm sure your audience members have their own examples of how this shows up for them. How do they have to, when they step in a room, how do you have to edit how you're showing up in order to match what is needed from you in that moment? And in leadership, this translates to extra invisible labor mediating tension, smoothing over conflict, nurturing morale. We need to name it and value it and then share it more equitably. Like it doesn't just have to land on women. We all need to be better at this. And the reality is that leaders do set the tone for how others respond. Women are often more fearful and tentative or focused on how they come across, whereas men don't necessarily consider that. So that in and of itself, just thinking about how do we want to show up and how are we going to navigate this particular tricky situation, that in and of itself is laborious and exhausting.
Yeah, your own identity, whichever groups you may belong to, and anyone who reports to you or anyone in the realm of your workplace, they all have their identities, and you make a really good point that there's this additional labor that isn't valued. So I think it's so essential how you make sure you address those things and you don't shy away from them because they are added to the layers of how our leadership plays out, whether we are a woman or not. And so I think being very specific about that probably gets you a lot further inland in terms of solutions with people you coach. And I imagine that if you're dealing with all of this, you're talking about the emotional labor that leaders have to do. You're talking about all the different ways that you're coaching and you're writing. How do you manage your own self care with all of this frontline work with people who need your help, as well as just ongoing projects that you're keeping track of?
Yeah, self-care is so important and we don't give it enough value. For me, I've learned to honor my energy, not just my time. This is actually becoming a bigger thing for me lately. That means setting boundaries, knowing what I say no to, exercising, quiet moments, just stepping outside sometimes, doing things that bring me joy, like riding my motorcycle or listening or dancing to the music of the Grateful Dead, which I so enjoy, or laughing with my husband. I continue to learn. For me, that's really important. Eat healthier. It's a work in progress. Practice my sleep routine, always a work in progress, and check in on what no longer works for me. I think that that's really important. Eliminating or changing those things, saying no to those things that I no longer have the energy for. And aging, just getting older can present new challenges because life is constantly changing. It's the one certainty is that, life will change. And so, I practice what I teach. I manage my energy, not just my time. And I schedule recovery the same way I schedule meetings. I also try to model that for other leaders because, hey, if we don't care for ourselves, we can't lead anyone else effectively. I also know that as a leader, as a coach, people are watching me, my kids, the neighbors, my clients, my friends. And so, and that's for everyone too, for your audience as well. You're being watched. People are watching you in ways you don't even realize. And it just simply means that leaders care about how you're presenting yourself to the world. That's the only distinction is that you're making that intentional choice to show up in the way that you want to show up. And so to me, it is important to be the person that I intend to be, to say who I say I am and who I want to be. I do have, strong boundaries around my time and my priorities. And in my book, The Journey Called You, my other book, I talk a lot about how to honor and respect yourself and how to extend your boundaries and standards. Self-care, after all, it's not a luxury. It's leadership maintenance. It's how we maintain ourselves. We have to tend to ourselves first. And it's like if we don't care for ourselves, then we're not going to be able to give our best to others. And I know for me that that's really important. So I just keep trying to do it better.
Yeah, you talk about setting boundaries. That just seems to be such a challenge for a lot of leaders, and I think it's great that you include that in your process and that, like you said, you practice what you teach. So let's do some rapid fire word association. Okay, so I'm going to say a word or a phrase, and I would like for you to tell me the most exciting thing about it or the most challenging thing about it. You can choose. Okay. All right. You ready?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. All
Okay.
right. Let's go. Empathy.
The bridge to trust allows us to lead with
Mm.
like connection rather than control.
Hmm. AI.
A tool that can enhance productivity, but never replace emotional intelligence.
Okay. That's a big one. Stress.
Mm. A signal that something needs attention. Yeah. When managed well, it can lead to clarity and growth. And when not managed well, it can destroy us physically and mentally. And yeah.
Writing.
Ooh. A process that brings insight and helps you make meaning out of complex things.
Oh, you love writing. I love the way you, you just lit up and just got so excited. I love that. Coaching.
Ah, it's where transformation becomes visible. It's transformation in real time, one mindset shift at a time.
Power.
Mm. Yeah, use it wisely. It's not about control, it's about influence, responsibility, and impact.
Motorcycles.
Pure freedom. It is my reset button, being present and focused and a little wild. Yeah, I love it. It's so much fun.
Fantastic. Okay, so keyboard listeners are smart, interesting people, and they have a variety of educational and professional backgrounds. What is a baseline action that they can take right now, starting today, so that they can become agents of positive change in their workplace? And I know you coach people in the workplace, but I'm assuming you expect them to implement these changes across the board in their lives, right? So, what is something that people can do right now?
Start by noticing. Awareness is the first step to choice, which is that's our power. Our power exists in our ability to choose. Well, we can't choose if we're not aware. So start by noticing your impact, your energy, how others respond to you. Small shifts in awareness, the small shifts lead to powerful changes in how we lead and connect with others. Leadership isn't about a title. It's just like you said. It's we lead everywhere. If we have kids, we lead ourselves. And that's about how you choose to show up every day. And that starts with awareness. We just need to start noticing.
Fantastic. Dr. Julie, I had such a pleasure talking to you today. Is there anything else that you'd like to tell our listeners before we head out?
Just that, I have a ton of resources on my website, drjuliedonley.com, and I have a YouTube channel. I'm on LinkedIn. So, connect. And of course, you can grab a copy of my book, Leading at the Speed of People, available anywhere books are sold. So I'm happy to be here. This was fun today.
Awesome.
So thank you so much for having me.
It was my pleasure. I enjoyed the conversation. All right, folks, this is Key Bart, Dr. Julie Donley, me, Thembi. Till next time. Keyboard is produced, directed, and hosted by Thembi Duncan. Theme music produced by Psycho Sid. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, follow, leave a review, or give us a 5-star rating. Your support helps the show reach more listeners, and it means the world to me. Thank you for listening.